Morning or good evening if it is for you guys. We are going to get started in another episode of the BBA podcast. I'm looking forward to bringing this one to you guys, and we're going to start in just a couple of minutes. So, team, let us know if you are indeed coming in and watching this one live. We're going to be talking a little bit about metabolism, of all things. So obviously we weren't live yesterday with the podcast because of the Australian public holiday for Labor Day. Obviously everyone was recovering from grand final day in Australia, and I hope that whatever you guys did, it was a bloody good day for you. So if you are coming into this one live, guys, let us know in the comments, and we're going to be getting started in 2 minutes, adding some fire. And this is going to be a good little podcast where we're going to be talking mostly about metabolism. I think it's going to be very, very handy. Now, to any of our listeners in the UK, if you could just do me a quick favor, I'm over in France at the moment, so if you could send across a decent sized cup, because this is all I've got. You guys know that I'm massively into my huge cups. This is piss. It's the biggest thing I can find in this bloody house. Anyway, I do digress. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in a minute. So who we got? Look at this, 10 people in live already. Hello, Kevy. How are you, mate? Lovely to have your company in here today, champion. Got a few Facebook users that haven't restreamed before by the looks of things, but all good. I hope you're having a nice morning or afternoon, whatever it is for you. Good evening. Yeah, okay, I got it. We got Warren Toddy. How are you, my legend? Morning, mate. Morning, friendy. How are you, guys? Good morning, Michelle. How are you, darling? I hope you're well. Who else? Look at this. There's a lot of, maybe it's my system. But anyway, I do digress. Hello, Mikey boy. Guys, we're going to get started in 30 seconds. Who else we got? Benny Richardson's in here. How hope you're well, Benny. Looking forward to some picks from you this week. Smashing it in the gym, mate. We've got Sammy Compton's in here, the beast. How are you, Sammy? Steve Hopley. What's going on, mate? Lovely to have you here. I'll order a cup for you on Amazon. Please do. Please do. Kenny, what is going on, mate? All right, guys. I think we are ready to rock and roll on another episode of the podcast. Let's give it some horns on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. Of course, this is the podcast that you come to when you're sick of the dumb diets and the unsustainable workout programs. Now, in today's episode, we are going to be running off a workshop that we did for our elite clients on the weekend that was to do with calories, and we called it the calorie calibration. In this episode, we're going to step it back a little bit and talk a bit more about what you can actually do naturally to boost your metabolism and where so many people are going wrong. And I think the big thing is that most people man, my metabolism sucks. And they can't understand why weight loss is not sustainable for them. So they go through these periods of ups and downs and ups and downs. And let me know in the comments if this is you. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you have struggled with all of your life. We're so fixated with short-term calorie restriction and calorie burn instead of playing the long game. And listen up. If you are in the Better Body Academy, you need to break this cycle. We need to stop playing around with short-term calorie burn and start focusing on improving our metabolic engine. Does this make sense? Most people don't realize that there are actually negative implications to reducing calories and doing oodles of cardio. Most people don't actually know that. And yes, doing some cardio is good. Yes, for most people, reducing calories is ultimately a good thing. But the building of a stronger metabolism is often the opposite of what we think it will be, particularly to someone who is sort of stuck in yo-yo dieting. So what I want to do is talk a bit about what is metabolism, because particularly to people who are not in Better Body Academy, this word is so misunderstood. Look, our metabolism is essentially all of the processes of the body that keep us alive and functioning. from our beating heart to the hormones that run around in our blood. It is everything that keeps us going. It's incredibly complicated. But for the purpose of this discussion, we want to talk about calories. We're talking about calories and the baseline number that you burn every day. We call this our resting metabolic rate. I want you to think about it like this. You go out to your garage and you turn the key on of the car in neutral or in park and you just let it run for 24 hours. So what I'm talking about here with you guys is if we just left you on, laying on the couch, watching Netflix, doing nothing for 24 hours, how many calories would you burn? Now, there's been a pretty amazing shift in humanity and what is actually good for us when it comes to metabolism. I want you to think about this. 1,000 years ago, having a slower metabolism might have actually been beneficial for survival. Why would that be the case? Well, when food is actually scarce, you don't want a fast metabolism, right? Because what would end up happening is you'd burn through all your body fat supplies if you had a fast metabolism. And then if food wasn't abundant, you'd end up starving yourself to death. Does this make sense? Whereas nowadays, a slow metabolism is inhibitory, is a problem. Why? Because a slow metabolism leads to the storage of fat. Whereas in 1,000 years ago, we would have wanted that, and that's what our evolution is set up to do, to store fat. Nowadays, where there is an abundance of food, storage of fat leads to diabetes and heart disease. So you want a faster metabolism. The problem is we need this faster metabolism so that we can still have a life, right? So we can still go out and eat hyper palatable foods like pizzas and dinners and be able to get away with it. Plus, the more calories that you actually burn, the more you can eat, which is great from a quality of life perspective. Like, to give you an example, in France, it's so much harder than in North America or Australia to get protein. It's just like carbs everywhere. If you don't have a strong metabolism, I can see putting on weight so much quicker here. I don't know if this is supported by evidence or not, but I can see that this could actually be the case. This is why you should care, because you want a stronger metabolism so you've got a better quality of life. If you've got this really, really slow metabolism and you overeat, even by just a little bit, weight gain is going to happen. And so will the effects of weight gain. Now let's put this into some numbers so you understand exactly what I mean. McDonald's Big Mac, 550 calories. Now if you, through your strong metabolism, I'm not talking about adding exercise, if you burnt 3,000 to 3,500 calories a day, of which the majority of that was just keeping you alive, your strong metabolism, then having a 550 calorie hamburger or Big Mac isn't really a problem, right? But if you are in maintenance calories, like so many listeners to this podcast will be, maintenance calories at 1,500 calories a day, 550 calories from a Big Mac is over a third of your daily intake. Can you see why this is a problem? And just to be clear, guys, you can have two very similar people body weight-wise. They step on the scales and they weigh exactly the same, be that 70 kilos, 100 kilos, or 150 kilos. You can have two people of identical weight stand on the scales and one has twice the speed of the metabolism than the other. Now, when we're younger, genetics plays a bit of a role, but as we get older, it comes down to the lifestyle that we lead and the things that we can do, and we're going to talk about this in this podcast. By the way, I just want you to know that if you have a slow metabolism, this doesn't mean that your metabolism is broken. I'm going to say that again. If you've got a slow metabolism, that does not mean that your metabolism is broken. It means that your body is responding to the signal that you are giving it. So if you want to change your metabolism, you need to change the signals that you're giving it. I'll give you an example. If you've gone through a load of dieting cycles, up and down with your calories over the course of a lifetime, you are sending signals to your body that you are going to go through these future periods where you will restrict and starve it. That's the signal that you're sending to your body and to your brain that in the future this is going to happen because in the past it's happened. So therefore, the body should store as much fat as possible. Is that like a penny drop moment for a few of you guys? Is this a penny drop moment? You are creating the signal through your behavior. There are indeed things that you can actually do to improve the speed of your metabolism. Now, even if you are only able to lift your metabolism by 100, 150 calories per day, you might think to yourself, that's less than a protein bar. Like, really? How does that make any benefit? Well, when you start to add this up over over days and months and years, it adds up to thousands of calories. And it leads to 5, 10, 15 pounds difference in body weight over the course of a year. And remember, when we're talking about our metabolism, we're not talking on including exercise. So in other words, listen up, if you are able to raise your metabolism by just 150 calories, 150 calories is about the same as doing a 30-minute walk. Now, everyone thinks that it's really hard to find time to do a 30-minute walk. So if you are able to increase your metabolism by 150 calories, that means that you don't have to do the 30-minute walk. Or it means that the 30-minute walk that you're doing is on top of the 150 calories extra that you are metabolically. Does this make sense? So what I'm going to give you here, guys, is 4 steps to improving your metabolism. Now, if you are in Better Body Academy, these aren't going to be massively new, but they're going to be a good recap for you. But particularly to our, I'm being, of course, generalist here, but our flexibility women and our kind of, circuit trainers, right? This needs to be a direct call to action to you that you need to start lifting weights. You are not going to get bulky. So let's start with the first one of these things. Number 1 is building muscle should be your priority. I've done a post before where I've talked about, particularly with women thinking like, I just don't want to get bulky. Oh my God, like Coach Nikki, one of our specialist coaches, our head coaches, she trains like 5 or 6 days a week and eats upwards of 3,000 calories. You are not going to build a stack of muscle as a woman if you are training 3 days kind of intensely and eating 2,000 calories. It's just not going to happen. What will happen is you might start to get strong. You might actually start to build some tone. Guys, what I'm talking about here is that as you improve your muscle tone, muscle is the tissue type. There's muscle, there's fat, there's bone. Muscle is the tissue type that is most metabolically active. All this means in layman's terms is it burns the most amount of calories to build and to keep it. It burns the most amount of calories. We're not trying to go into the gym to get our heart rate up. We're not talking about circuit training or flexibility. And this is why you need a proper program developed by a coach who knows what he or she is doing. And it doesn't matter your start point. The more I read about metabolism, the more I am so believing of the idea that it doesn't matter your start point, it doesn't matter your experience, you must lift weights if you really want to maintain your body weight forever. It should be the most important thing you do because muscle is the most metabolically active tissue. You might enjoy circuit training, and that's great for burning calories. But this is the short term. If you want to build a bigger engine, you must lift weights in a style that helps you to build muscle. Does this make sense? Now, before you kind of argue, yeah, but running and doing circuit training burns more calories than resistance training, I just want you to know that you are absolutely right. It does. The problem is that if that's going to be your fat loss mechanism, running or circuit training, the moment you stop doing it, what happens? You're not burning those calories anymore. When it comes to building muscle, it works by increasing your overall metabolic rate. Does this make sense? So a resistance training day won't burn as many calories as going for a run. What it will do is act like an investment, a financial investment. You invest in the share market or you invest in a property, and guess what happens? You might not see the benefits for 10 or 20 years' time, but you've built solid foundations. And you need to give up the short term for the long term. Does this make sense? Trying to run the fat off becomes adaptive as well. What I mean by this is, the more that you start to run, the more that you're sending the signal to the body, hey, I'm trying to burn calories here. And so what's the body going to do given that its only goal is to keep you alive? It's going to break down its most metabolically active tissue. For example, if I said to you, you need to save petrol. There's two ways to save petrol, right? Number one, drive your car less. Number two is what? Hit me in the comments, guys. Number two is what? Get a smaller engine, a smaller car. And when you just do cardio as a fat loss mechanism, that's what you're doing. You're just getting a smaller car. It's not what we want. Yes, you lose weight, but you break down muscle in the process. So step one is your focus should all be about building muscle. If I haven't said it or made it clear, I'm talking about resistance training, not circuits. Okay? Does this make sense? We're not just trying to get your heart rate up. We do that if we want to improve our cardiovascular system. But if we want to help manage our weight long term, we build a bigger engine. Let's talk about number two and talk about really the types of movements that you need to be incorporating and fixating on the most. And just as I didn't kind of plan it this way, this podcast, but just as I do this, I'm starting to think that, in a way, the podcast may feel a little bit divisive between men and women because men are encouraged to do things like deadlifts and squats and overhead presses, whereas women, particularly women who haven't been into a gym before and naturally and expectedly and understandably find it somewhat intimidating because of the environment that you're in, are probably going to feel like anxious about really getting started. The types of movements that you want to be performing are the important big compound barbell movements. Now, you might ask, well, why is that important over doing, say, isolation exercises like dumbbell bicep curls? Well, it's because of the signal that you are sending your brain and body. When you are doing these big, high demand, full body, multiple joint exercises, you are sending the message to the brain that it needs to build muscle if you're going to continue to subject it to this force. Because this shit is heavy. Whether you're lifting a 5 kilo bench press or a 500 kilo bench press depends on where you are in your journey. The message to the brain and the body, the stimulus is the same. And although the point of these compound lifts, these bench presses, overhead presses, bent over rows, squats, deadlifts, although the point is not to burn calories, as I said, that's not the point of resistance training. What ends up actually happening is, guess what? It's the type of training that burns the most amount of calories. Has anyone ever done a deadlift or a squat and been completely puffed? It's not because you are running around or doing it in quick velocity. It's because the oxygen demand from those full body exercises is so huge. Again, huge demand huge stimulus. This is why you're fatigued after a big lifting session. And this is why we need to start focusing, particularly our girls, need to start focusing on strength as the metric rather than weight loss. You know, a good program a good transformation program like Better Body Academy should always be thinking about ways that it should evolve itself to get better. And the more that I do this, the more I really do think that our focus as a family should be on lifting and getting stronger. The stronger we get, the more muscle we build, the more metabolically active tissue we build, the more calories we build when we're at our barbecue, when we're hanging out with our kids, just burning calories while we have a beer. That's what we want, building a bigger engine. Does this make sense, guys? The mental hurdle for a lot of people to overcome is that I just want to go and work up a sweat and burn some calories. And yes, that's good for the short term, but the moment you stop doing it, the moment you go on holidays, the moment you take away the cardio, the benefit stops. And then it's just you with your no muscle and no metabolically active tissue that goes back to what it's always known before you started doing cardio. Does this make sense? I'm thinking there's going to be quite a few penny drops coming into this podcast. Number 3, I want to go through, and I've got 4 total, is to give the body what it needs. So in number 1, we covered building muscle with resistance training should be your priority. Number 2 is incorporating the big compound movements in your programs. Number 3 is giving the body what it needs. And that goes hand in hand with the last 2 points. Why is the nutrition piece important for building your metabolism? I want you to think of your body like a building site, because everyone's got some knowledge of that. They can analyze that. It takes 2 things on a building site to build a house: builders and bricks. Without them, without either one of them, you can't build the house. And the same is true in the body. It takes 2 main things, main nutrition pieces or puzzles to build muscle. What is it? Enough calories and enough protein. If you were training the house down, and I see this all the time, flogging yourself, but you're not getting results, and then we start to look at the reasons why, most often it shows up that your nutrition is crappy and you've got 0 chance of building muscle if you're restricting the hell out of calories, flogging yourself, and then training the house down. Think about that. You're sending a mixed signal to the brain, and the brain doesn't know what to do. For many people, this is going to involve what is called a reverse diet. We talked about different camps that people are on the masterclass the other night. And one of the camps is, I just want to build some muscle. And this is why camp 4 was, I just want to build some muscle. Doing a reverse diet could be important for you, because if you're not eating enough calories, you're not going to be able to build muscle. Does this make sense, guys? We went really deep on the topic, and to all the elite members, you will now find that training inside the members area under elite workshops if you want to revisit it. The importance of this is profound in terms of muscle building. And I just want to note, protein, okay? It's great to get your calories up, but the last piece of that nutrition puzzle is the protein piece. Without the protein, the bricks of the muscle, you're no chance. These are the 3 ways that you improve your metabolism. And here is number 4. If you're ready to set fire to your metabolism, and again, this seems somewhat counterintuitive a lot of the time, is you need to get more sleep. You need to get more sleep and deal with your stress in a way that slowly pushes it away and avoids it becoming chronic. There's nothing quite as damaging as undersleeping and stress. And interestingly, having been through having a baby 10 weeks ago now, I needed to scale back my 5 days a week training in the gym to 3 days a week training, because what I noticed is with the increase in stress and the lack of sleep, sometimes 2 or 3 hours a night with him getting up, that what was happening is I was getting these niggling injuries. So both behaviorally I was tired, but I wasn't recovering as well from these sessions. So I needed to send the message to my brain to pull back a little bit for a period of time. I want you to think about what happens when you are underslept and stressed. What happens? Behaviorally, you are tired and emotional. How much do you feel like doing the things that we've talked about in 1, 2, and 3 when you're tired and emotional and stressed out? Exactly nothing. So the things that are going to help you improve your metabolism, you're going to do the exact opposite. And on top of that, what's going to happen is with your motivation being killed, what foods are you going to crave? It's going to be those high sugar, high fat foods which pick you up and talk to your emotional centers, right? So there's the behavioral component of this. And then there's the other part, which is the hormonal component. When you are undersleeping, what's happening is you're sending signals to the body to reduce overall testosterone, overall growth hormone. These are what are called anabolic hormones that help to build muscle and keep you younger. And what instead you are releasing is chronic amounts of high cortisol, the stress hormone that keeps you in this fight or flight mode. And I'm not going to name, but I'm thinking of two of our women members in Better Body Academy that I know are just very, very engaged in their businesses, and it's amazing, but they're totally struggling with their weight. They are trying really hard with their workouts. They're doing their steps. They're doing great with their nutrition, but the weight's not coming off. And usually what happens is by a process of elimination, you can say, are they doing training? Yeah, they're moving around. They're doing the steps. The nutrition seems to be like, what's going on with this client? And then we find out that they're sleeping 2 hours a night. And if that's you and you're listening to this podcast, you know that we need to change it. So guys, we've talked about 4 things that you need to start doing now, regardless of where you're at, regardless if you're in BBA or not, to help ignite your metabolism. What did we talk about? We talked about prioritizing resistance training over cardio if weight loss is your goal. If you want to be a marathon runner, then you have to run. But if you want to manage your weight, then it's got to be that muscle building type of movement. Number 2 is making sure that you're incorporating predominantly the compound lifts. Number 3 is making sure that you give your body the stuff that it needs. And number 4 is sleeping and managing that chronic stress. Now, let me talk about the outcome that's going to happen as a result. Let's just say you believe what you read in this podcast, what you listen to in this podcast. And let's say you do as I hope just one of you will do. And that is to go and deploy this tactic. Stop trying to run around the gym, getting your heart rate up. Instead, focus on these big compound movements. Focus on fueling your body. Focus on strength rather than weight gain. Here is what is going to happen. I promise you. When your metabolism starts to speed up, you're going to jump on the scales and probably become disappointed. Why? Because when you start to build muscle, guess what? It weighs something. And so let's say that you've lost 10 kilos and all of a sudden you start to prioritize a reverse diet, you start to prioritize muscle building training. You are going to build muscle, particularly if you've never done it before. And what's going to happen is that's going to reflect on the scales. The hard part about this is for you to have the emotional non-reactivity. Hang on, I feel better in my clothes. They're kind of filling them out, but in a different way. I kind of feel like I look better in the mirror, but I weigh more, or the weight loss has stopped. And that's a very difficult mindset to reconcile if you have been trapped in weight loss mentality for a long period of time. So I did want to finish off this podcast and let you know that it's likely that that's going to happen. It's likely that your weight loss, particularly if you don't have that much to lose or if you've already lost a lot, if you start prioritizing something different, the signal that you are sending to your brain and body is now different. You're prioritizing strength. And what's going to happen is you're going to build a bigger engine. Downline, it's going to lead to you burning more calories overall and effectively losing weight. But it may not show up on the scales immediately, and kind of dealing with that and knowing about that and expecting that requires probably a little bit of mental fortitude. Anyway, guys, that's what I've got for you today. Hopefully this podcast has been helpful and a really, really good reminder. If you are inside of Better Body Academy, obviously deploying these tactics is part of our trifecta system. And if you're not in Better Body Academy, what are you doing to be able to get this stuff in action, to start getting results as part of a plan? I think you probably need some help. So if it's you and you like what you hear, you like this change in mindset, this movement away from yo-yo dieting and more of a sustainable approach, then certainly jump on our website or send us an email and we can start from there. Guys, this has been the Better Body Academy podcast, the podcast that you come to when you're ready for a boost in your metabolism. We'll see you guys in the next episode.